Will Bank of America use Ripple's technology to make a stablecoin? Does Amazon or another company plan to use Ripple? In this video, I'll show you why I think it's better for Bank of America to use Ripple and XRPL instead of doing it themselves. Everything I know about this will be given to you so you can understand it the same way I do. I also want to talk about some facts. There are many people who think the case will stop this week. A little while from now, I'll let you know where all that information about the case is now. Going ahead, let's learn more about stablecoins in the US and how they work. I guess Gary Cardone is well known. Even though I don't follow him, he says that when Bank of America, which is one of the biggest names in payments, comes out of the closet and calls Bitcoin a big step forward in technology, he compares it to the printing press in the bottom of the first inning of a 9-inning game. Bank of America has said a lot of things, but they're not really building with Bitcoin. I can show you proof that they are building on the XRP ledger, which I will do in this movie. Let's do this because there is so much false information out there about X right now that it's making my head spin. We need to check this out to make sure it's true. This video is pretty old. Some people will be mad at me for showing an old movie, but I need to show you how Ripple and Bank of America are connected. After that, I'll talk about all the facts. This year, it seems like everything is going to break loose. So a sub 121 has been called back, or moved back in the last week or two. Yeah, it seemed like minutes. You hear CEOs of banks like Bank of America saying, "We're all in, and these are the organizations that we..." Bank of America was one of our first partners when we were making the payment system that only used messaging software. We've worked with these kinds of banks for a long time, and the lack of clarity and I think even animosity toward saying, hey, using these assets and this technology is not okay, it's dangerous, is not the best way to deal with it, but I think things are going to change a lot this year. For example, since November and the outcome of the US election, we've been talking to banks about becoming reserve bank or transaction banking partners for the stablecoin. Did you hear that? Did you hear it right then? I missed it, so let me play it again. It slipped my mind the first 5 times I heard this clip. I can't explain why my brain missed this last part. Listen again. Becoming a reserve bank or transaction banking partner for the stablecoin? Or just continuing the talks we've had with banks about becoming a reserve bank or transaction banking partner for the stablecoin? That's interesting, right? What we're talking about right now. Ripple and Reluce technology is being used by Bank of America to start their own stablecoin. That's pretty much what she said there. At first, she said Bank of America, and she said she had never talked to banking partners to get them to use our system. And we can see that on Ripple's website, and I can show you 100 things that connect Ripple to Bank of America. But people need to really understand this. Okay, how many blockchain patents does Bank of America have? How many patents does Ripple have? This is the juice. Bank of America owned 56 patents that were all about blockchain. Okay, Bank of America has been known for years to have the most blockchain patents of any financial company. In fact, in the middle of 2018, they had 45, which was the most of any bank. But this part talks about patents for Ripple and XRP. According to news stories from early 2025, the Bank of America has filed 83 patents for Ripple and XRP and has already started using it in its own transactions. 83 inventions that have to do with Ripple. This is the number given by a third-party CEO in an interview in January 2025, which was posted on Binance Square. Take that along with what it's called. However, this is one of those inventions. This does have something to do with Ripple and XRP. This is one of those inventions from Bank of America. FIDA. Google lets you look for these. They're also all over X. What do we want to know about why banks are going to choose Ripple at this point? Work with people who do too much. I think it's just to figure out how technologically advanced the bank would have to be to make this technology. We'll talk about that right now. Let me play one more clip of this. Using public blockchains is also becoming more acceptable by big businesses, which was not the case when you and I talked to banks back in 2016. In that time range, 10 years ago, There was a lot of fear and people didn't want to go on public chains. That has changed a lot. What do you think are the most important skills or traits for companies to have in order to join public blockchains? Actually, I think that back then, to be fair to the organization, the infrastructure wasn't really set up yet, and people didn't get the knowledge they needed. Okay, it will take a few years. For people, it takes a few rounds before it starts to click. I really believe that Ripple did a great job as a part of that schooling, because I think Ripple was the first blockchain to really go after the big banks and say, hey, this is 24/7 value movement. Begin to follow the rules. I would say you were way ahead of your time. But it's clear that institutions are now on board, in part because I think the technology has proven to be reliable enough, and then, to be honest, better in many ways than what a lot of schools can give. When current trad see solid coins with value changes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they say, oops, my systems can't handle that yet. They will soon do the same thing with on-chain stocks, ETF, and any other product you can think of, right? Because of this, I think they're at a changing point in how they see the technology and how strong it is. With regulations still being clear, the level of adoption and, to be honest, fear of missing out, FOMO, that we're seeing from institutions is pretty high. It's pretty important. There is a lot of FOMO going on in institutions right now. Finally, institutions are letting it be known that they want to use public blockchains. Now let's talk about why Bank of America would hire Ripple to make a stable coin instead of doing it themselves. This is very easy, very easy. It's that simple. As simple as this is, many people make it very hard. This is why. There are a number of strategic and practical reasons why a bank like Bank of America might choose to work with Ripple instead of making its own stablecoin system. That list of reasons starts, why should you work with Ripple? Tracked equipment and a network. Ripple has already set up a blockchain that can be expanded. It is called the XRP Ledger for Global Payment Network, RippleNet, and it is intended for fast, cheap transactions across borders. Several financial companies around the world trust this infrastructure. Do you mean hundreds? Knowledge of regulations and rules. Ripple has years of experience helping banks deal with the complicated rules that govern digital assets and payments. Regulatory compliance is a big problem. Working with a company that already knows how to deal with these issues can greatly lower the risk and speed up the time it takes to get the product to market. Just so you know, Ripple always puts rules first. Right? Banks are always trying to lower their risk. To help people fully grasp, this station talks about this subject a great deal. Banks should aim to take on as little risk as possible. Speed to market. To make a safe coin and the technology that supports it from scratch can take a long time and a lot of money. By using Ripple's existing platform, banks can get new goods out much faster and focus on integrating them with the ones they already have. Services. You need to know that if a bank wanted to do this, they would need to hire a blockchain development team. And banks haven't really spent much time here. Who do you hire then? Who is in charge? What size group do you need? How much does this cost?